Hey, morning, Kevin. How are you?
Yeah, very good. How are you?
Yeah, very good indeed. A nice sunny morning actually in London, which is great. Makes a nice change. But today we're really delighted that we've got Renee Edwards with us, who's a kind of colleague, friend, contact through the agency world, who's come and joined us. So Renee, thank you ever so much for joining us this morning.
Not at all. Lovely to see you guys.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, Renee.
You too. Yeah, really. And lovely background. You've obviously in a nice sunny place with a very nice garden.
Thank you. Well, it makes a change. It's been miserable all week. So, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So today we're going to talk very broadly about kind of account management in quite a broad sense, and also about some account-based marketing as well, which Renee just reminded us about, that is becoming very popular at the moment. So we've got some questions that we've prepared. We'll run for about 25 minutes as usual. So should we jump straight into the questions? So just before we do, Renee, just talk about your background and your company so that everyone knows who you are and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So Digital Radish, we're a B2B marketing agency specializing in account-based marketing purely for tech companies. Me, myself, in terms of my background, I was actually 14 years client side marketeer, kind of building teams, and randomly decided to set an agency up because I was frustrated actually with many of the, I guess, what we're talking about today, really, in terms of kind of account management and, having someone that truly got underneath the skin of my audience, my product, my market, without me having to kind of, by the time that I'd written a brief for them, I probably could have done it myself. So there was a lot of frustrations I had at the time, so decided to kind of try and fill that gap by setting up Digital Radish with my co-founder, Lorna Childish.
And when was that?
Oh, so that was back about 5 years ago, 5-6 years ago now. So
yeah, very good. And you were saying you've grown amazingly well, really well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, particularly through this period, we've grown in year on year, but particularly this year, more specifically, and I think that it is down to the fact that we are, we're working. We've dumbed down a bit of a niche in a very lucrative market, and naturally, where we have kind of come from client side, a lot of our thinking is quite strategic thinking, and therefore, businesses now more than ever, right? They need that kind of added partner or guide, if you like, to kind of to help them, rather than just being very hands off. I'll wait for the brief, and then execute on it kind of creatively, if you like. But
I mean, one thing that's a common theme across all of the ones that we've talked about, all of our podcast episodes, in fact, is around focusing. In these markets, you can't be all things to all people. You do need to be a niche provider. As a guy called Pat Flynn says, an inch wide, a mile deep. And Kevin, I think that reflects where Resignal is as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was just thinking actually when Renee said the business is going 5 years, I think we probably met about 5 years ago around the agency collective, didn't we? It certainly feels like it's around that sort of time, certainly when you were in your early stages and we were kind of like going again a little bit as Resignal.
Yeah, exactly.
Literally not having a clue, having worked in an agency before. I think we were thirsty for a bit of knowledge, but just knowing what wasn't working, I guess.
Exactly. And I think there's, to Mike's point, there's this journey of you try different things to figure out what works, and in the early days you have to take on work just to pay the bills and grow. But then you figure out what you're good at and you find that focus. I very rarely see agencies that start with a clear focus, niche and specialism. I think they find, based on their best work and their case studies and their clients, this is what we're really great at. And then they decide to double down. And that's where kind of the second phase of growth typically comes from. And it feels like, and again, don't want to put words in your mouth, Renee, but it does feel like you maybe found that niche for you, and it seems to be working, which is great.
And it's nerve-wracking at first. That is nerve-wracking, saying goodbye to, actively taking work away.
Exactly.
When you kind of have confidence, of course, at the beginning, you don't, have no idea. So it is, it's definitely a bit of trial and error. But you eventually, I think, get to a point where you where actually it's costing you more, almost, doing the work that is outside of your comfort zone, and so ends up costing you, if you like. So yeah, I think it's just really, really important. But it's getting to that stage where you feel confident enough to start turning that work away
Exactly.
is quite refreshing. And actually, once we decided to do that, that was definitely a bit of a weight off our shoulders, to be honest with you.
I mean, this takes me back in some ways, just before we answer the questions. By the way, this always happens, Renee. We have a set of questions, and then me and Kevin go off on a rabbit hole, but they're normally interesting rabbit holes, hopefully. If I go back to 1998, when I was at KPMG, the partners there, I always say to Kevin, it was an amazing learning place, like an amazing place to learn with very talented people. And when you looked at the partners and how they became successful and how they grew their teams, there was one big thing that came across, well, two big things predominantly, becoming the trusted advisor, and we'll mention that in this episode, but also sector focus. Clients love it when you understand their sector. They absolutely want people that know the issues, have been in the sector, understand what their success factors are, the challenges are, because then you can relate so much quicker and you can tailor what you do to their specific problems. I'm doing some work, as people probably know, I do a lot of work now supporting sales teams with improved negotiation skills to get more profitable deals. And I focus on particular sectors. Where do I focus? Marketing agencies, IT services. Why? Because I know them really, really, really well. And it's amazing. Their sales teams are like, you seem to know exactly what our challenges are. I'm like, well, I've been in your sector for like 20 years. And it makes a massive difference. Makes a huge difference.
Definitely, that kind of subject matter expert, and that's how you earn trust from somebody. And there's only a certain amount of time you can wing it until someone actually says,
Exactly. And the further up the tree you go, as you get towards C-suite, if you don't know your stuff, you'll soon get found out. I mean, I think Kevin working on e-commerce, working with some of the private equity organizations, you're dealing with people that really understand sector dynamics.
You do, definitely. And it just really helps to know from our side, kind of how do you measure success and what are the key triggers to get there? And the track record is just so important in showing trust if you've got it. And even I was trying to relate this to content writing, but I remember we had an in-house writer years ago that covered all of our clients. And we typically work across more of a range of sectors, typically kind of like e-commerce, travel and financial services. And we had a writer that was writing for a travel brand, but they were writing kind of like financial services copy in the morning, kind of travel copy in the afternoon. And we realized that that person writing about something like the best Christmas markets to go to or something like that had never traveled outside of the UK. And if you're talking about travel, and certainly European global travel, that's where you need that subject matter expertise in everything that you do. And having someone that can understand the subject is crucial, because otherwise, if you don't, you could be a great writer, but if you don't get it, certainly in the tech world, you absolutely need to know what you're talking about. Otherwise, it's no good just being good at grammar and telling a story if you don't understand the subject.
Exactly.
This is its oh God, this is the word.
Authenticity.
That's the one. Very, very quickly, and like you said, in tech even more so. I mean, you almost can't get away with it, right? You can't.
So let me ask the first question. So I'll ask it to kind of both of you, which is like, when you say account management and account planning, what do you mean and why is it important? And let's start with Renee.
So I think obviously, as we know, that the role of the account manager is to kind of maintain, nurture, and grow the account. But I think that's certainly changed in the last 10 years for sure. I think gone are the days of just meeting, I guess, clients' expectations. The Mad Men style, take them out for as much corporate entertainment as possible, and you've secured your budget for the next year. And I think with the market's a lot more fragmented now. I think competition is high. I think, actually marketeers themselves, or, the client expects more, right? And I think there's a bigger pressure to kind of differentiate themselves for sure, and justify our existence, if you like. So I think what I'm actually seeing is, certainly with a lot of our kind of tech clients, they're trying to kind of pivot themselves, I guess, with this kind of partner type messaging. But what does that kind of, I guess, actually sort of mean, if you like, for the actual account manager? And I think this is about, this is about being proactive. So, this is not waiting to be told. This is about leading. This is about kind of then using insights, and acting and advising on them, in advance of, just being told what to do, essentially. So adding that real true value. We talked about, I guess, I think the account manager of today, really does need to understand the client's, product, market, audience, better competition than the client knows themselves. I think, I always say to my clients, I expect them to become those subject matter experts, and they need to spend time in, researching and taking that time with the client to do so. And I think also a big part around adding that value is about kind of drawing on your own kind of experiences, if you like, to and drawing on the latest kind of trends to be able to kind of push innovation, and to be able to be that kind of proactive, I guess we're going to talk about this a lot, but I think that trusted advisor, and I think that takes a lot from going to, okay, I'm going to meet your demands. I'm going to make sure you all keep on track time-wise. I'll keep you within budget. I will, I'll be at your beck and call, your babysitter, if you like. From going from that to, a proper trusted advisor, someone who is coming to you. Like, for instance, now when I think about some of my clients and what that actually means is, when they're coming to me about kind of career advice and things like that, and beyond just, what you're, what you're delivering, if you like.
And their strategy. One of the things that I found, in my days, and again, I do refer back to KPMG because it was a great training ground, is that when the client called you about their thinking about a strategic initiative and they want your advice, then I think you started to realize it's like, yeah, okay, I'm now one of the trusted advisors. And as an account director, which is what I was at KPMG for a couple of accounts, that's a really hard position to get into, because, as you say, dealing with big brands, there's no end of people banging on their door.
No, exactly, absolutely. And I think actually it's slightly easier, I think, for us, and in our business we do much more, as I mentioned, that kind of account-based marketing, which starts with strategy. So we're already having strategic conversations about how they go to market, which accounts they should select, all of those things. So the conversation is elevated. Whereas I guess, for some businesses, they're more at a kind of tactical end. So it's like, how do you actually get from, that to kind of up here? So as I say, it's easier for businesses like mine, but I think there's no reason why that can't happen, for sure. I think.
And I think something, so before I ask Kevin, something that I found is, tools like Sales Navigator, although a lot of people, don't like it, they don't believe in it, actually for doing ABM, it's actually a really useful tool, because it starts to feed you information about that account and what's going on, and some of the releases that they've made and the people that are talking, and all of that helps to bring insight to your clients and to make sure that you're up to date with what they're doing.
Absolutely, yeah. All of my stuff have Google alerts all set up on there. There's just little bits, little tricks, that you can do, that we do here at Digital Radish for us and our team. But I guess we might come on to this, but I think it is a skill and it is a process, and and I feel like businesses don't concentrate enough on it, in my opinion.
Well, let's come to the process next. So, Kevin, first of all, what's your view of account management, account planning? What is it? Why is it important?
Yeah, I think just to touch upon something Renee just said at the end there, I think it's a case of sometimes it's you can follow too much what you've set out to do originally. And this is what I think we probably did in the past. We'd say, here's a scope of work for 12 months, let's follow it. And we delivered against it and we got results. However, the problem is you need to be thinking about stuff because it changes. And I think the key thing is you might get hired to do something and achieve something, but sometimes you can get fired for not doing anything outside of that. And stuff like setting up the alerts, like Mike, you've mentioned to me before, I think you've gone into a meeting where something happened a day before with that company that was massive news, and
Yeah,
that changed the whole conversation around what you were talking about, because there's something that's just so much bigger. So having
exactly right.
awareness around that makes such a big impact, whereas going in blind, you straight away, it's like you're missing the point.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly
So,
right. And being that adapting, Kevin, it's a really, really interesting point. You might have been planning for 3 weeks for a meeting with a CMO, and you've got all your stuff together, you've got your decks, everything's absolutely in place for the conversation you think you're going to have. And then that morning something happens and their agenda changes, and you've got to be adaptable in the moment to tune into what their issues are. That's a really high level skill I found to be able to achieve.
yeah, no, I think it is. I think our model that we've probably developed together has been more initially project management based, in the sense of let's get stuff done and deliver quality to our clients. But then there is the account based side of listening, understanding, growing when it's appropriate, but in a trusted advisor, helpful way, and understanding what they're doing outside of us. That again it's not that we're looking for cross sales, it's more just awareness of how we can do better and kind of fit into the bigger picture.
So, Kevin, you just read my mind. So I want to ask you a different question, which we haven't prepared, Renee, so you're going to enjoy this. And so, so the difference between digital project managers and account managers. So, Kevin, what's our experience of? Because people do think about, well, is it the person that's making sure that all the trains run on time? Is that the account manager? Or is that the project manager? But what's the account manager doing that the PM's not doing? Where does that overlap, and how is it different? Kevin?
So I think every agency calls people different names that mean different things to different people. In my language, a project manager is someone that keeps the trains running on time. It's internal scheduling and resourcing and making sure that if a client wants something by a certain date, we make it happen and we deliver against that. And we're not in that situation if we're making sloppy mistakes saying we'll send you this audit in 2 weeks time, and then in 3 weeks time there's nothing that's been communicated. I think that's the project manager. And I think the account manager in our model is a subject matter expert that has developed probably client-facing skills to understand and consult with clients almost as a client partner, but they're working alongside that project manager to organize their time so that they're not becoming too bogged down, if you like, in everything. They have someone that can organize the schedule and make sure everything runs. But when the client asks a question, in our world, a technical SEO question, you want someone that has experience and quite a lot of experience in dealing with that challenge. So for us, that's the model where we've got a subject matter expert with client-facing skills paired with a project manager. But again, it's like all of this, there's not a one fits all and a single right answer. There's different models that we've evolved that over time, trying different things that maybe are more typical agency practices, and it just hasn't worked for our business. And then
what's interesting, Kevin, is if I go back 3 years and I asked you the same question, you would not have articulated the same answer as precisely.
No. And that's because, again, like everything, we've failed, made mistakes, learned from them, and exactly, evolved. But I think to me, the answer is figure out what works best for your clients. It's about retention and growth with that client and finding the model that molds and fits alongside them as best as you can.
Very good. So Renee, what's your kind of experience of that?
So exactly the same as Kevin, pretty much. I guess the only difference is, I guess, some of your subject matter experts. We've again only recently, I guess, started. So I think felt like we were actually asking almost too much of our account managers in a way. We were so heavy on making them very strategically minded, that actually I think sometimes they almost lost sight of the kind of the deliveries. It's almost the opposite way around. So we now have ABM strategists, so that actually there is no double up, and actually that they're pulling on them for the strategy. but it's less heavy on the account manager's shoulders. Whereas before, I think we were expecting them to be the strategists as well as the account managers. And I think that, that worked up until a certain point. But it takes a lot of, as you can imagine, a lot of training, because, your typical account manager, sometimes from other agencies that we were pulling, were what I call paper shufflers, essentially. No disrespect to anybody, but that was what we were finding in the market. So we actually decided that we were going to, set our own program up internally, almost like a bit of a grad scheme to try and pull people up to our way of account managing. But that's a big shift that we've done, is actually, employ strategists now and not have that so heavily weighted on the account management, because actually they should be putting more time into those, those relationships themselves, and, spotting and creating opportunities within that account as well, and just giving them that headspace to be able to do that.
Yeah. I mean, we had interesting how your model's evolved. If I look at that, that KPMG model there was something I said to Kevin years ago, something really clever that I didn't realize was clever until I'd left. They used to have client partners and delivery partners. It's a very simple model, but the client partner operated at board level across all areas of the business, all service lines.
Yeah.
They were amazingly talented people because they'd been in tax or audit or consulting or risk. They understood how the firm worked. They understood exactly how the client worked. And their job was, it was like the conductor. It was to bring in the right people, to your point. If they needed an expert in international tax, the client partner brought in the international tax expert to talk to, Treasury or to the CFO. And they were just brilliant at knowing who the experts were to marshal the right resources to come into the client. They were also brilliant at one other thing, which I learned, which I hadn't understood until post-event. If a project went wrong because of whatever reasons, either we hadn't done something or the market had changed, the client partner's job was to gently ease that person out of the client environment, bring someone new in with a fresh pair of eyes. And that way you didn't lose the account, because the client delivery person, the delivery partner, had moved on to something else. It hadn't worked out for whatever reason, or the director. You brought a new face in with a fresh perspective. Client was delighted because we're now back on track, and we've still managed to maintain this huge global corporate account. And I thought that was it's a very skillful talent to have, to be able to make sure that internally you manage people out of the environment that aren't getting along sometimes, and bring in new people whilst maintaining that kind of client relationship.
Definitely. And I think you bring a good point up there, Mike. Again, something that we do for our team is, it's a really simple thing. We use Crystal Knows to personality profile our...
Is it any good? I'll just talk about that for a second, because people may not know about it. What do you think of it?
So people that don't know, it's a personality profiling tool, and it essentially uses LinkedIn and other data sources to kind of pull in and allow you to see what personality profile that person is. So we use it a lot actually in our account-based marketing approach. So we craft messaging around, if they're a red dominant, then we want to get to the, if we're putting a marketing message out, it's quicker, it's to the point, it's sharp, concise. But we use it internally, so we use it for hiring. So we will ask people to take a DISC profile, and it seems a little bit old school, but actually we find it's really, really helpful. Equally, as part of our account management training, we ask them to profile their own customers, so or clients rather, because I don't know, I believe in it, I have to say, and I'm very much kind of a red creative, and I remember I just couldn't crack these clients that I had, and and I'd be all singing, all dancing, and I could see inside they were just like, Renee, don't touch me, I got eye contact, they were just, I couldn't win them over, and I was, more and more it was making me kind of get in their faces, and I couldn't work this out, and it was really troubling me, and I think that's kind of where it first started, and started looking. Actually, I realized that you know, that they were they're blue, they were analytical, they wanted to think about things, they wanted to process things, you know, and as much as I was forced, of course, they were pushing back. And as the moment I realized that was, you know, I was like, oh, you know, I've got it. I know how I need to now be with them and in their environment. And I know how to craft my email. You know, they're not blasé, you know, I'm very quick. And, you know, I expect them to just know what's going on when actually, you know, they wanted the detail. They want, you know, they wanted that. So that was really interesting for me. And so that's something that, you know, I've pushed quite hard for in the agency for our team to do that with their clients as well.
Very good. Let me just move on to something else. So, because we're going to run out of time otherwise, I'm quite conscious. So is it something that you can turn into a process or a system, or is it something that you just need to find really talented individuals? What are your thoughts, Renee?
Good question. So I think there are good people that are really good people, you know, really good people, if you like, whereby, you know, they're able to kind of befriend people very, very quickly, make people feel comfortable. But I think that can only get you so far. I think there is a process, and certainly, you know, you don't become a trusted advisor overnight. You know, I tell the team very much to get the client to respect you first, and then get them to like you. Because, you know, I think, you know, otherwise I think you can kind of go in with all of that, but actually you scrape it away and it's like nothing.
Yeah, Kevin's smiling. I think we've had an experience of this, haven't we, Kevin? Yeah.
Oh, we definitely had a period where it's like we're probably very strong on the people skills, but it's like mine and Mike's approach on this has definitely been, let's delight the clients with our work, and then the people skills are easy. It's like we're having conversations about how this isn't going incredibly well. Whereas I've been put into quite a lot of positions in the past where it's like, Kevin, go and fix this or put out this fire. And I can try. And in a lot of cases, I have turned those situations around, but it's not fun and it's not easy. And I would much rather say, let's do great work and then let's go celebrate success with our client and build upon it that way. It's so much easier. And
exactly right.
I think one thing to touch upon there is the early stages with a new client is vitally important, because those first impressions, if you make a bad start, it's such an uphill battle. If you make a good start, it's so much easier. And I think just putting in that extra care and attention, and I'm not saying you ease off and neglect them at all, but you definitely in the early stages do everything that you can to make that go as smoothly as possible and make sure they have got that level of care and attention. That everyone's a bit different in how kind of high or low touch they want things, but just being there for them and guiding them and making sure that they know what you're doing, when you're doing it, how well it's working is so important.
I mean, as an aside, Renee, our podcast is called "It's a Good Start." There's the background to that was that me and Kevin, with our teams, when we've got new accounts, we'll kick off, we'll get the work going, we'll deliver what's in the scope of works, and when our team go, great, we've succeeded, we're often like, well, it's certainly a good start, but it's not excellence.
No, it's that good,
and that,
great, isn't it?
And that good to great from is it Jim Collins? You know, very practically, you know, in a very practical way, is no, good isn't good enough if we're going to keep this client in the long term. Because there's something funny happens, I find, with clients, is that you add a lot of value at the beginning, the first 3 months, and they're absolutely kind of bowled over by your insights. But then the benchmark becomes, well, that's the norm. Well, how do you get from there to there?
Yeah.
Because that's just what they expect now.
Definitely.
And that's very hard to manage, I think.
I think so. And I think that goes back to, and we build that now actually into our costs. That goes back to Kevin's point earlier about, you know, it's not a case where we ever just kind of do all, obviously, the strategy, the creative messaging up front. The program starts to run and then it's kind of hands off. It's actually like, how are we constantly making this better week on week? Like, how are we, you know, how are we changing things? Let's not just, oh whoops, that didn't work. Like, that doesn't fly at all. It used to irritate me on our client side. And so it's, you know, again, a big emphasis on, you know, from our guys to to be looking and kind of going, oh, well, that's worked for somebody else, and actually sharing knowledge within the business, making sure that, you know, you're tuned in with, you know, what other people are doing, and what's working and what's not working, because particularly with marketing, there is no silver bullet, if you like. So, you know, it's always slightly squeaky bum for us.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yes, sorry.
No, it's fine. So I'm just conscious of your time as well, Renee, because you might well have appointments coming up next, and we probably do as well.
Going to London today.
Fantastic. So let me just like kind of draw this to a close. Kind of like, you know, so from each of you as a kind of a summary, what are your kind of 2 or 3 very practical things that you'd recommend that, you know, for those people out there that are agencies or even not agencies, just entrepreneurs running their businesses that are working with, you know, key accounts? What are the kind of, in your view, the 2 or 3 things that you kind of have to get right, the foundation blocks, before you even get to that delight and excellence of clients? So Renee first, I think.
Yeah, I think, you know, first of all, it's, you know, about getting that basics right. So making them feel important, making them feel understood, making them feel like they're taken care of. I go back to my point around, you know, get them to respect you first, and then get them you to like them.
Great point.
And then I think my final point is developing that, you know, relationship that is built on trust, and that comes with, you know, being authentic. And I think, you know, I think it's about proving your value first, and making yourself essentially the more value that you create, you know, the less indispensable that obviously you become.
Yeah, very good, brilliant. Kevin?
So speaking of it from a founder perspective, where I'm not involved in day-to-day, but I'm overseeing our team and quite often checking in with key client relationships, I would say it starts with alignment. So what is it that we're trying to achieve, and what does success look like? Because if you don't know that, how are you going to actually achieve success at the end of whatever time frame you're measuring that on? So I think that's actually a really important piece. And then obviously achieving results against that is important. The other thing that I think, maybe this drives my team mad at times, but a healthy paranoia. And I think what I mean by that is sometimes I'm looking at this of, it's just my gut feel and intuition of something doesn't feel right here. We need to get to the bottom of it. And quite often I do feel like I trust my gut feel, and there is something that we need to go with, and trying to check in and say, okay, well, like your example, I gave our team feedback last week where my feedback was, this is good. However, good isn't good enough, because we know, like we're talking about, there's loads of good agencies out there. We're in a very competitive space. And if you're going to maintain a client in terms of like long-term longevity, then you absolutely need to keep delighting them. And I think having that healthy paranoia of looking at it from their shoes, from a founder perspective, checking in with them as a one-to-one, and just, it doesn't have to be frequently, kind of every quarter, every 6 months, but just having a chat on what's changed on your side, how are things going with the team. And quite often I ask them, is there anything, and I won't take offense to anything that you say, but is there anything that we can do differently that you would recommend improving? And sometimes they give me a couple of pointers, sometimes they say it's absolutely fine, but those couple of pointers could be the difference between, at the end of a 12-month agreement, them renewing versus going to pitch. So I think
absolutely
those are the couple of things that I would definitely say. If you're a founder and you've maybe moved away from the day-to-day, try and keep yourself involved a little bit to a certain extent, because your intuition and gut feel, I think, will probably be ahead of quite often the people in the team, just because you've done it for so long and you know it inside out.
Yeah,
brilliant. And I think the only thing that I'd add is the ability to challenge your clients' thinking. I kind of know when I've got to, you know, I don't, maybe maybe I'm not trusted advisor with a number of clients. Maybe I am, who knows? That's them for them to say, not for me really. But what I do know is, if they're open to me challenging their thinking, I do know that we've started with respect, and that we've built a relationship where they can reach out, and it's not offensive to them for me to challenge their thinking. And then what we often find is we kind of co-create a better problem statement or a better solution based upon that ability for me to challenge with humility, I think is what I think I've seen works really well.
Definitely.
Renee, it's been a real pleasure. I've really enjoyed it. Kevin, I know you have as well. And
yeah, thanks
a huge
a lot for
thanks. Yeah, thank you for giving up your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And where can people find out more about you?
Oh, on our website, or they can email. It's a very good question. So Digital Radish, www.digitalradish.co.uk, or my email, Renee, RENAYE @digitalradish.co.uk.
Brilliant. And thank you once again. And for people that are watching on YouTube, please could you subscribe? It really helps us. Thanks a lot. We look forward to the next episode. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Bye.